opportunity for family. That will open up the opportunity for family reunification. So it's expected that we're going to see a really big jump. I don't know what that's going to be like for Vermont, but we are going to see a big jump in people arriving through Welcome Corps. And in that case, that would not be through the resettlement agencies. That would be through a group of community sponsors or a family, and they would put in an application. They'd get some basic training, and they would then act like the resettlement agency. And for a few months, they would do the intense work of enrolling people, finding them housing, finding them work. But these people would be arriving with the same refugee benefits that other refugees would be arriving with. So we are likely to see that pick up in November, December. So it might look different in January or February here in Vermont. And then finally, we have the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan parole program. The Cubans and Haitians in particular, if they arrive through the parole program, they are allowed to work. They have to apply for an employment authorization document, as well as the Nicaraguans and Venezuelans. So they can apply for a document. They're allowed to work. They can stay up to 2 years. However, for the Cubans and Haitians, they are also eligible for benefits like a refugee would. So they can apply for Medicaid, they can apply for Reach Up, they can get refugee cash assistance and those kinds of benefits. And that program, again, doesn't come through resettlement agencies. That, again, requires that somebody is a financial supporter on this end, and it really acts like a private program. And so either a family member or a friend or a community group would act like the resettlement agency and help people set up. But if there are programs that the resettlement agency is running, like English language or employment services, they can sign up for those. So they do have access, particularly the Cubans and Haitians. The Nicaraguans and Venezuelans have almost no benefits other than being able to work while they're here. For political reasons, those two sets of groups are very different. And we are seeing a high number of arrivals, particularly in Chittenden. And so USCRI is exploring the possibility of a pause for a few months on arrivals while they figure out housing. They are running out of even short-term housing there. But Bennington and Brattleboro did have, I think, a slowdown at the end of the summer in an effort to also secure some shorter-term housing with SIT. But I believe there is no particular pause on ECDC operations in Bennington and Brattleboro. A couple of more updates just from my end. The state did set aside some funding to support refugees and asylum seekers around long-term residency here with a focus on employment. So we do have an RFP out right now that's focused on asylum seekers and to run a small grant program for asylum-seeking organizations to help them support asylum seekers as they come in. So this would not be a program for refugees as they come in. However, another RFP will go out probably next month that will be focused on employment supports for refugees. We already do fund some of that, but this is additional money, and we'll be putting that out probably in later October. I think that's all I can think of right now. Just finally, on the legal side, we do have funding through the Office of Refugee Resettlement and through my office for Afghan legal support. And there's also funding available for Ukrainian legal support. And the Afghan legal support is currently taking place through AALV. And they are primarily supporting the Afghans who are in need of assistance for their status through ECDC. So AALV is the primary partner there, and USCRI covers the rest of folks. And that work has been ongoing. The Afghans were given 2 years of parole when they arrived, and they are now due for re-parole. So the federal government has decided to extend another 2 years of re-parole. And so most folks, I think in the ECDC catchment area, will automatically get that re-parole. And some people have probably already heard that they've received it, and they don't need to do anything proactively. There's a handful of people, if they haven't applied for asylum yet and they haven't done anything else around their status, they would have had to proactively apply for that. And again, AALV and some of the staff at ECDC are supporting people in that. Okay, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions on that piece. before I hand over to Joe so he can talk to you a little bit about what's happening in terms of folks arriving. And then we can open it up and find out how you're feeling on capacity and if there are any issues we have to address. And yes.
Hi there. One thing I wanted to share around the legal side of things, while everything we've heard, we're confident folks will get, reapproved to stay. Employers will need to start re-verifying their documents. And that is something that the BDCC is going to be doing outreach. We've already done with some folks, but if anyone you're working with is employed, make sure that their employers are, part of our system. They should be, but we'll be promoting another webinar for employers where we remind folks that it's up to them to just reissue the I-9 every 2 years or whenever folks paperwork is set to expire. So again, we aren't expecting anyone's work eligibility to lapse. We don't think that we haven't already learned about, and that's something that is really a one-on-one conversation. But even if there are folks who we are certain have already gotten all their paperwork re-verified and they've been re-paroled, their employers may still need to just re-verify that. And so that's a workshop we'll be promoting. So when you get that email, feel free to forward it on to any employers of folks that you work with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alice, can I share my screen? I'm disabled.
I think, Jack, can you make them host? Or there we go, should work.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good morning, everyone. And thank you for coming, and also thank you for your support to refugees. This presentation is our last for this fiscal year. And so I will give you the overall of FY23 and also our projection for FY24, and then the progress we have made, some of the challenges we have, and also open it up for discussion, some of your suggestions you may have for FY24 and 25. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide you the information on our refugees, as Tracy mentioned, also share progress and capacity challenges, and for all of us here to discuss ongoing local capacity and concerns. My outline for this presentation again is the FY23 reflection and the characteristics of Arafi refugees. And I will give you an overview of our the services we provide here at ECDC. And I'll also talk a little bit of how refugees are faring here, the challenges we all face here, the projection of FY24 and 25, and where refugees may be coming from for FY24 and 25, and questions, concerns, and discussion. So for FY23, for Brattleboro, out of the 100 projection we made from the beginning of the year, so far 28 refugees have arrived. Housing. For this year, for Brattleboro alone, 47 individuals have been permanently housed in Brattleboro, and 41 refugees, 6 Yemenis, 5 Syrians, 10 Eritreans, 9 Congolese, and 11 Afghans are still temporarily housed on SID campus. For Bennington, against a total of 50 we projected for this year, Bennington received 11 cases, 8 Afghan families and 1 Congolese family, representing 23 people. 5 additional people will be arriving by the end of this week, bringing Bennington total to 28. All 23 are permanently housed in Bennington. Country of origin, Afghans, because we started with the Afghan population, so predominantly it's Afghan coming. We also have Congolese, the Eritreans, Central African Republic, Yemen, and Syria. Towns, refugees are currently resettled in Brattleboro, Guilford, Bennington, and Wilmington. These are the towns currently with resettled refugees. For our out migration, compared to the national trend, 90% of the Arabic refugees are in South Vermont are staying here. Our family size still remains single to 5 individuals. For their education background, we continue to see a good number of refugees still arriving with some college level education, but this is not as high when we had highly skilled Afghans arriving. We're beginning to see for the first time, special needs, especially with handicap accessible service. Children arriving here are between the ages of 1 to 14 with their parents, by average. We haven't received unaccompanied children. For languages here, we have Pashto, there is Spanish, French, Tigrayan, and Arabic. These are the languages we're seeing coming. So I wanted to tell you ECDC programs and services we provide to refugees. Through this, the first program as refugees arrive, we call it the reception and placement program, and usually we use the word RNP all the time. And this program provides initial 30 to 90-day services after arrival, and it provides critical assistance such as rent, food, clothing, furnishing of housing within 90 days, and services such as locating and preparing housing, referring to cultural orientation, enrollment of children in schools, finding employment, referral to domestic health assessment, enrolling into state and federal benefits, and application for Social Security, employment authorization documents. So, general case management. These are services we provide within our first crucial period, which is 30 to 90 days. During that period, we develop a self-sufficiency plan to determine what their needs are and which program they will enroll into after the 90 days. And after this 90 days period, we are not required to provide all of the services that are mentioned above. So then after the 90 days, we provide other services to refugees. And one of the services, we call it the preferred communities. We usually use the acronym PC. This program is funded through the Department of Health and Social Services Office of Refugees Resettlement, and we always use the the acronym ORR. And this program provides critical interventions and services for refugees with special needs who have arrived within the past 5 years. We assist this vulnerable population who may be experiencing psychological conditions, including emotional trauma, young adults with parents or without parents or permanent guardians, older adults with without a family support system, and those with physical disability and medical conditions. So this program is very specific to who we serve. We provide long-term case management, health and medical interventions, referral to mental health services, and other social adjustment services in this particular program. Then we have the ASA, which is the Afghan Supplemental Assistance Program. And this program is available to Afghan refugees only and not other refugees. And it provides emergency or temporary housing, long-term housing navigation assistance, short-term food assistance, legal support, and housing-related wraparound services. And this is only for the Afghan population.
Hey, Joe, yeah, that slide, there's something wrong with that slide. I don't know if you can move
Back?
on. No, move through it.
Which one?
The one that you're on right now, if you could just go to the next one, I think there's something with the transition.
Oh, can you see?
Yep.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
better, I think.
Okay. All right. So we have the United for Ukraine program. This program is for the Ukrainians for humanitarian parole status. and they are eligible for services as employment support, refugee care assistance, medical assistance, case management services, and etc. They are not eligible for the first 90-day services that I talk about in the RNP program. The Cuban Haitian entry that Tracy talked about, those eligible for this program are Cuban and Haitian nationals who are granted parole leave or with an application for asylum pending. Once we verify them, they may be eligible for cash assistance, medical assistance, employment preparation, job placement, English language training, and other services offered through the RISS program. My slide I always talk about also has what we call the RSS program, but I didn't have time to go into that. Then we have the Machine Grant program. This program helps refugees overcome barriers and quickly find jobs. The intent for this program is for refugees to become economically self-sufficient through employment within 440 days without access to any cash assistance. It also provides case management, employment skills training, job referrals, family budget planning, and etc. But this, due to the complexity of this particular program, we are actually internally discussing to suspend it for this year. But we're open to discussing with some of you, our partners here, who may be interested in knowing more about this program. We have other services such as health navigation. We have a dedicated staff here supporting refugees to navigate health access, mental health support. Through this program, we work closely with mental health providers for referral to mental health services. And we have our community partnership program. We continue working with community volunteers and critical sponsorship groups. We also have the regular volunteer programs, and these are individual or groups of individuals who are agreed to assist with specific tasks. Again, going back to this co-sponsorship program, we are working with the Michael co-sponsor team right now on how we can strengthen the way we deliver services. And lessons from our ongoing discussion, we plan to reach out to other co-sponsorship teams. We have a higher ed support program, and this program supports refugees to navigate U.S. higher educational system. Some of the support we provide are how to apply to colleges or how to navigate the financial aid system. How refugees population is faring here. Most families currently have at least one member of the household with employment. For our legal, we submitted all 44 cases for adjustment of status. We have 13 asylum approvals, 29 pending asylum cases, 2 SIV pending. We submitted 56 EAD renewals, 23 are reparoled, and we also submitted 13 family reunification requests. So far, 13 refugees received their green cards. For permanent and temporary housing, out of the 88, not 77, for Brattleboro this year, we have 41 that are still temporarily housed on the SRT campus, and the rest are being permanently housed. For Bennington, all 23 refugees, and with the group that are also coming, we already found permanent housing for them. So all 28 refugees who arrived this year will be permanently housed. For Bennington, we do not have a temporary arrangement as we have in Brattleboro. So we try very much as possible to have refugees move into their permanent housing in Bennington. All refugees who arrived within the last 2 months have primary care providers and at least paid a visit to their PCP. The majority of refugees who have been here for over 6 months have either obtained a driver's license or bought a car. For English language, we continue to see improved conversational English among those who could not speak English. There is still low cultural adjustment for some refugees, which is expected. And for school enrollment, all refugees' children have enrolled in school except maybe for those who arrived last weekend. Challenges. Finding housing for new arrivals is the most challenging for us. With the pace of arrival, we are not able to find permanent housing on time. This is putting pressure on the campus space we have right now. And funding to support refugees still on SRT campus may come to an end in October. While we're still working with SRT to find additional funding, if we do not get funding in time, we may not receive more refugees beyond this period. For transportation, meeting transport needs outside of the public transport system for newly arrived refugees is challenging. So for the fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, which starts October 1, for us in ECDC, will provide at least a short-term transport services to fill that gap for at least 6 months, with possible extension to a year. We will continue to work with our partners here to address the broader system level challenge. But we just thought to just step in, especially people leaving SRT campus and people who trying to get to work within that first 90 days. Immigration, we still do not have immigration lawyers in our region to provide immigration support to refugees and asylum seekers. Right now, majority of our clients, as Tracy mentioned, still supported by AALV in Bennington. Limited services, the limitation of critical systems and services to support refugee resettlement in towns outside of Brattleboro remains a challenge. So for now, we are so constrained to resettle refugees in Brattleboro and Bennington and a little bit of Wilmington. But even with Wilmington, it's a very serious challenge for us right now. The role of refugees agencies, there is still that lack of understanding of the role of our role among some community providers. So please visit our website at www.ecdcvt.org for clarity on what we do. It takes about 7 years for refugees to successfully integrate into their new country based on if they are doing everything right, but some state and federal funding does not last that long. So that's one of the challenges and we will face and continue to face in our region. I did bring up this federal policy, for example, the president's 125,000 annual determination. Why this is good, but distributing this number puts a lot of pressure on us, especially in rural resettlement efforts. So I just want to transition to our FY 24 and 25 projections. I came to you, I think, sometime in April and presented these numbers. It still remains the same. And I want us to look at this number in our questions and discussion period and give us your feedback. So for Bennington, for FY 24, is still projected at 75. Refugees 30. Refugees, meaning refugees with U.S. tie, will be 30. Refugees with no U.S. tie will be 20. So the total refugees will be 50 and SIV will be 25. For FY 25, refugees total will be 60, SIV 30, and total of FY 25 is 90. For Brattleboro, refugees with U.S. tie here will be 40, and refugees with no U.S. tie 85, giving us 125. And then SIT total of 25. Sorry, giving us a total of 150. Sorry. And for FY 25, we have 125 for refugees, 30 SIVs, and 175. So these are the projections we have for both Brattleboro and Bennington for the fiscal year FY 24. Now, fiscal year 24 starts October 1 of a few weeks from now. And same with Brattleboro for 150 for that period. So we will open up the discussion for your questions and concerns, and some of the questions and concerns we also have, especially in the housing. Where refugees may be coming from, we just don't know, but still our assumption is that the majority of our refugees will come from Afghanistan because of the existing community here. We also anticipate refugees coming from Syria, Yemen, South America, maybe Guatemala, Africa, especially Eritrea and the Democratic Republic of Congo, or maybe from Ukraine, depending on what happens in Ukraine. Where individuals may resettle for next year and the year after, we are operating two counties right now, the Windham and Bennington counties. And in these two counties, two towns have been approved, and these are Brattleboro and Bennington. However, our operational coverage is usually 100 miles from our office, but that means ideally we may be resettling refugees at least 50 miles from Brattleboro or Bennington. But again, we do understand that limited resources currently in these areas, our priority remains in Bennington and Brattleboro. I just wanted to share this trend with you. I saw it on the PRM website, the State Department. It just shows how refugees resettlement trends has been over the years. From 1980, so this is 2002 up to 2002, not 2003, correct me. And you can see that we were all the way up there, and then the trend fell and it continued to fall. And then at some point, it remained stable. And then when you come to 2019, and I think it's mostly because of the COVID period that it really dramatically fell. But you can see from there going to 2022, now 23, has really picked up. So I thought to just share this with you, how refugees resettlement across the country has been over the years from 1980 to 2022. And I thought to also share some of the photos here with you, with a sewing class, volunteers also helping with bike rides, English language class there, and also when we have the 1 year anniversary. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, they're all just thinking of their questions.
Okay.
Joe, I wonder if I could just piggyback and explain.
Mhm.
You talked a lot about the services and the 90 days and some of the other programs, but also just the refugee support services, which I know you weren't able to get to. The refugee support services basically supplements a lot of what happens so it can happen for longer. So even though officially a lot of services have to end after 90 days, the refugee support services allows to continue case management, employment programs, et cetera, so that folks can keep getting the support that they need. And so,
Right.
because reception and placement isn't long enough and the money really isn't enough to do it justice. So that's really how refugee support services funding came about. And both resettlement agencies get that in order to be able to continue to help the families who need it most beyond 90 days as well.
Right. Yeah, my slide for that got stuck somewhere. So
Oh, no problem.
I was going to explain it. But thank you, Tracy. So let me open it for questions and concerns and suggestions to the team here.
One of the pieces of feedback we've been getting is, as you know, people need to continue sometimes to put in documents to keep getting their benefits for reach up or other benefits. And the state of Vermont has no way right now of providing letters in language other than English. And so it's a challenge. And it really doesn't meet the accessibility standard that the state requires. So we do get multiple complaints about that. I'm forwarding those up, and I continue to try to engage DCF to see if there's a workaround, because if we wait for the IT solution, it will be years. So basically, it puts a lot of burden on resettlement agencies and other provider services to have people come in with their letters and then figure out a translation. But just to let you know, we're aware of it and we know it's problematic, and I'm doing what I can to raise that issue up to the Economic Services Division of DCF. And Jen, you had your hand up.
I was wondering, Tracy, if you might be able to just talk a little bit about what I think it was last week, we talked about sort of taking this moment to find more efficient, time-efficient methods of doing benefit enrollment. And you had spoken about, because you get to talk to state directors from around the country, some models that we really should be talking about down here, especially within the provider group.
Yeah, and I don't recall many models, and I'm sorry, Jen, if I'm missing something. So yes, so what we're learning from ECDC and what they have known a long time is that it's taking a long, long time to sign people up. And they've shared that up with DCF. And I believe they are talking at the district level about ways to maybe bring in a cohort. So if we have arrivals, rather than have every case manager wait on a phone call with each individual for 3 hours, instead reaching out to the local Agency of Human Services office and saying, let's bring them in for an appointment and let's do it all at once. So that might be what you're referring to, Jen. So that's a model, right? Bringing folks in. In other states, they have a clinic day almost. So not a health clinic day, but a service day where they say, okay, let's open it up and we'll be there. And anyone who needs to come in and get signed up can get signed up for that day. That's another way to go. It's a little trickier in Vermont because of our numbers. Sometimes we have small numbers, but I believe that Caitlin is working with Stu Graff and maybe Adam as well in the Bennington office to figure out if there's a better workaround. I think one of the challenges we have is sometimes all the information doesn't get down to all the line staff in all of the agencies. So someone at ECDC might know something, or someone within the state of Vermont at the district office might know something, but maybe not everyone does. And so sometimes what you have is a miscommunication around what's allowable or what policy or what times people should come in. So we have been actually meeting internally, a very small group every 2 weeks, just to hit through those operational issues so that we can say, hey, this is happening right now and there's a mix-up. And so that's been helpful to raise issues very quickly as they arise. But right now, just wanted to highlight that we don't have a quick answer on the language piece. And right now it is taking a long time to enroll people. So I believe Caitlin and the Agency of Human Services is working on that.
Yeah, Jen.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to share an experience about the enrollment about benefit that happened last week. So one of the refugee, we did apply for benefit online and then it did not go through. So I took the person to human services and then we applied on paper and then immediately they did an interview and it was Friday and they said the card gonna come in Monday. So that was really so good. And before that, we'll do on phone and then it will tell you 48 people ahead of you. And it will take you like 2 hours, 3 hours. When you have like more than one refugee to enroll, then it will take forever. So if we could get like a day or somebody assigned for refugees, yeah, we are happy to bring them in and then fill the paperwork as soon as possible. And they're gonna be more faster. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder, is either Adam or Sue on, just to respond to that? Oh, looks like they might not be on right now. And then Jack, I think you had your hand up. Thank you, dear Jenny. And I think that's what the goal is whenever possible.
Yeah, I was just going to say in Bennington, our practice has been to do it in person as much as possible and to try and schedule that when we know someone's coming for shortly after their arrival. And that has helped, at least helping us know that the applications are in. There can obviously also be unforeseen delays beyond that point. I was going to make a note also. Thank you for bringing up the language and accessibility aspects, Tracy, because there are a couple of things that we experience that I think are not totally unique to Bennington, but have been a big part of our experience here. which is that we have quite a few folks who are pre-literate in their own languages in addition to English. And that's also been a major accessibility concern around filing all kinds of different documentation, particularly state documents. And there isn't really a great system in place to support folks who would need basically some form of spoken interpretation around any communications that were coming from state services. And that has been everything from, DCF paperwork to Department of Labor and unemployment paperwork. It is a big burden, not so much to a degree on the resettlement agency, but particularly on the individual who's trying to understand what's happening for them. So that I think the other kind of side of that is that a lot of the information about how to access interpretation, so helping folks move towards independence, is actually written information in a variety of languages posted at different offices. So it can be really challenging for someone who's pre-literate to then be able to independently access their appointments. So trying to think creatively about ways to support folks who are still working on their reading and writing is really, really important, because even fully employed people who are pre-literate are heavily reliant on services that don't yet exist within the state of Vermont.
So Jack, you're saying that if they're pre-literate, right? So just to clarify for everyone, that means they might not be able to read in their own language or in English. So there's a form. Now you can get someone on the phone, right, at the state office in the language, but that person doesn't see the form in front of the person, so it becomes difficult to fill it out. So you end up having kind of a three-way conversation. Yeah.
Exactly.
And because
And
Go
even
ahead.
folks who are familiar with how to get to maybe like the local state services, who are very familiar with the people who work there, it can still be challenging for them to do that independently, or certainly takes an extended period of time for them to be comfortable and confident and to build the relationships to go and do that independently.
Yeah, to be able to go in on their own and say, I need to work through a form. Yeah, thank you.
And to be well known enough to the staff that, oh, this is, and that's been really wonderful to see happen. And I know it has. I see Erin, who's here from Department of Labor. I know that's happened with some of our clients who work with her, where they've gotten to know her. She knows when they're coming. They have a relationship where they can facilitate that pretty well. But for anyone who's new to the community, for any kind of system that works beyond incredible individuals, making sure that that's in place to support them.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, I'm following the messages. The presentation I will share the presentation with this group. So if you did not get all of what I presented, you will get it in an email. Is there,
I think Jean is trying to raise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe, I had a question regarding what you were explaining about the relationship with SIT and a concern about funding. And that perhaps that money would end in October, which would result in the cessation of refugees coming to Brattleboro? I don't know. I think I may be confused on that. Could you say a bit more?
What I was saying is that it may result into the slow arrival of refugees, because what's happening right now is that because we have the SIT campus, we are able to bring in more refugees at a particular time. But if we don't have that resource available right now, it means that we have to find a permanent housing or some kind of temporary arrangement somewhere else where we're going to have refugees before they come. So it may result into a slowdown of refugees coming.
What's the source of that funding that you referenced, Joe?
It came from the state. It was through the VRAP program that provided our support to SIT. But like everywhere else, the VRAP program has come to an end. So SIT, that funding source is coming to an end. So we're discussing with SIT to see which other group of people we can reach out to, but currently we haven't identified anyone yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a little background. So normally when refugees arrive, they are meant to use their own money to support their housing. So traditionally, there has been no housing funding at all for refugees when they arrive ever in Vermont. It was unique during the VRAP period, but normally they use their small amount that they get from the refugee program. It's called welcome money, but it's not really supposed to be called welcome money, but it's their arrival money, let's say that. And each person gets, I think, $1,250. So traditionally, that money is usually exhausted in the first month when they pay for first month's rent and a security deposit. Our challenge is because there isn't permanent housing to go into, if they go into a hotel or something, that money gets depleted really quickly. And then by the time they get ready to then go into an apartment, they don't have that money. And so it's the fact that if we had the housing available, they would use that to just slide right into housing. The challenge is that because we're using temporary housing, it would normally deplete that. But that's just for your background. Traditionally, normally it's on the refugee to pay for it initially. And this temporary aspect really makes it even more expensive.
Thank you. So, Joe, do the projections that you've given us for 24 consider that potential slowdown?
Yes, I say yes. If we don't find an immediate solution, it may slow it down seriously. This is what the numbers that I gave you are projections that we submitted to the State Department, but those projections are also based on the local realities of what's here. So if we can find housing or temporary housing, where we're going to place people, because for us it's very, very hard to find permanent housing before anyone arrives.
Yeah.
So the temporary housing model is what we are going for, because then it gives us time to be looking for housing around. But if that temporary housing is taken away, it's going to seriously challenge our flow of refugees coming.
If I could jump
Tim,
into,
yeah, please.
yeah, thank you. Tim Rivera from World Learning and SIT, for those who may not know me. I just wanted to follow up on some of Joe's remarks regarding the temporary housing arrangement, and just to confirm that we are very, very interested in continuing to be able to provide this temporary housing moving forward. It is just a matter of identifying funding to be able to cover our costs in doing so moving forward. So, as Joe and Tracy said, we have been using kind of COVID era funds to be able to do this, to ensure that, this temporary housing could be made available. But I think there are also, to some of the conversations that have also been happening during this call, there are also some very clear and tangible benefits to having folks on campus for their initial period of time, because it can help to coordinate the initial provision of services. Everyone's in one place. I know that, for example, thanks to Amir's help, I see he's been on the call, that some of the initial employment services will be moved back to campus on every Monday afternoon. So it is kind of helpful to be able to provide initial resettlement services at scale when folks first arrive, if we have a decent cohort of folks on campus. So this is something that we are still very much interested in doing, but we are very quickly and very aggressively going to be working with ECDC and other partners to identify funding to be able to continue to do that. And as you can imagine, with a lot of the most recent arrivals that have come through within the last month or so, it just means that our existing funding runway has shortened faster than we initially anticipated. But this is something that we're still committed to doing in the long term.
Yeah, and to add to that point is that we want to continue that model of first initial 2 months or 3 months people stay on SIT campus with services to what Tim mentioned, services that provided right on campus. There be an enrollment into services, federal or state services, as well as English language support for that initial period. But in order to do that, it means that we have to source funding for the continuing stay of folks on SIT campus for that period. So if you have any suggestions or any group you know about, please feel free to send us an email, send them our way so that we can continue to reach out to others who may have funding to support us in this program.
And I want to make a quick note on this as well, which is, so as we mentioned over in Bennington, everybody's been going into permanent housing. Partially that's because we don't have any temporary housing here. So that's obviously something that we're interested in potentially developing over here. As Joe was saying, we focused resettlement efforts really closely in Bennington and in Brattleboro because the sort of geographical realities of Vermont mean that that's what makes sense for helping people actually receive services. So while in theory, people who are coming to Bennington can also potentially be in the SIT space if it continues as temporary housing, that's challenging for the caseworkers who are over here in Bennington. So finding local options is also important. And I also wanted to mention, so Tracy was mentioning the sort of arrival money aspect of housing, and that money is meant to support housing and is meant to support food and other essentials, and that's $1,075 per person per case. And so especially for smaller cases, if you think about the cost in Southern Vermont of even a pretty, a fairly low cost studio or one bedroom apartment, just to put down a security deposit on that is going to get you close to maybe $2,500. So that is pretty much all of your arrival money. So making permanent housing possible on a short timeline is also very much hinges on developing relationships with local landlords, small and large, and helping them understand not only the financial realities of folks who are resettling here in the United States, but also just how people arrive on paper, which is that they have documents that look very different from the kinds of documents landlords are used to reviewing. So I know we at ECDC have been doing a lot of landlord outreach, a lot of landlord education. We've been developing these relationships, but that's something that we really count on the whole community to help us with, and to help landlords understand sort of the nature of housing. And there's a lot of resources, and we have internal staff at ECDC who are housing specific navigators who work with clients on finding housing and understanding what it is to rent in the United States. But we rely heavily on the community to come with us on this journey of learning and developing the systems that will support people as they're coming into Southern Vermont.
I don't know if we have the school system on. I think schools were probably invited. Do we have anyone from school here?
I saw Deb Combs, I think.
Just wondered if we might be able to get an update from just how things are
Hi.
at school. Hi,
Sorry.
Deb. Thank you.
I'm just trying to multitask here.
No, thanks.
I have a couple students with me. So I would say we're working on having some regular meetings with ECDC. Caitlin's been coordinating that for us, and I think that's going to help our process as we register new students and get information. I think we have about 16 new students who will be registering in the next few weeks here. So we're looking at, some pretty busy times. We're, constantly thinking about our programming and our ways of best providing the services for those students, but so far, so good.
Thank you. And I know that's a big, 16 doesn't sound like a big number, but it's a pretty huge number in a small school with the kinds of needs and the language needs. So much appreciated. And I'm glad to hear that you'll be connecting with ECDC more regularly so you get that heads up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
And here on the Bennington side, we have monthly meetings with our school district. Melissa Senecal wasn't able to be here this morning. They have added additional English language teaching support to the district, and they have also hired someone to be a translator and interpreter with the families. That's been a position that's been in place. Very excitingly, that person has now come and is working with ECDC as a case manager, and a different member of the refugee community was recently hired as their replacement. So we're really happy with the level of connection that we've had with our local school district and the ways that they've stepped up to proactively support resettlement. And they are, just from having conversations with them, they are thinking long-term about what resettlement is going to mean for Bennington and how they can start building systems that will support people. Right now, almost everyone in Bennington, certainly everyone who's in the elementary, middle, and high schools is Afghan. So the language needs are pretty contained within that language group. But they are already thinking about and putting in place ways to support other languages as well.
Well, and Jack, to let you know, I have unspent Afghan school funds that I have offered up. So I would love to get them spent rather than send them back to the federal government. So
I would love to help you spend them.
thank you very much. So it's very specific to Afghan because of the weird way things were funded. So if you can connect me, I'd be glad to. This might be the time to provide some support, and they can even buy materials that they could use for other language groups in the future. We can get flexible around that, but I have Afghan support funds that I'd be love to put into the school.
That would be amazing. We will definitely talk more about that.
Thank you. All right.
All right. I thought to also open it up to
I
other
see
stuff.
one hair. Oh, I
Okay.
also see
No.
a hand from Jeff.
Is that okay? I just wanted to say, this has been a really good discussion. And the thing that's striking me as a volunteer now, not as a professional staff member like all of you, is how much change there's been over the last 18 months in terms of the work Tracy's talking about, that Joe's undertaking, et cetera, Jack was talking about, in terms of the cooperation of the community across all of the different services that are changing as quickly as they can. And as Tracy said, that's not always real quick, but the intention is there. I think for us as volunteers, it's really good to feel that and to feel that there's strength and cooperation on the system side, and as well as to feel that the community itself, represented in those agencies, but also in volunteers and individuals, are becoming, I hope, more welcoming and getting more used to having people from other cultures, countries, and languages amongst us. Clearly, the school systems in both Bennington and Brattleboro have done a terrific job adjusting. Other systems are doing the best they can. So I just wanted to make that general comment that this is really a major accomplishment for all of us across Southern Vermont. I'm really proud of all of us for it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And I think you nailed it. Even with ECDC, when we started, we wouldn't have made it here without everyone's support. The community has been very, very supportive. Everyone has stepped in. And we are here because of the collective approach we all took to welcome refugees in our community. It hasn't been easy for all of us, but we continue to learn through the process, and we continue to grow. And we still have some significant challenges ahead of us, especially when it comes to housing. And so, feel free to give your suggestions out. And these numbers, we project them. These are projections. Feel free to give us your feedback. Feel free to tell us what's going on with your respective agencies and what suggestions you may have in terms of strengthening our own relationships to provide services to refugees. So I just wanted to add that to what Jeff said.
Sounds like if there's nothing else, we might be able to end this early.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. As always, this recording will be posted on the Welcoming Communities website. And we'll also, Joe, if you want to send us the PowerPoint, we'll make sure we send it out to folks as well.
All right. Thank you, folks. And thank you, Alex, for coordinating this. And you all have a wonderful week.
Thanks, everyone, for all the great work.